technology has changed hugely during the course of my life. It's 84 years, and we started with the radio, which was very, very important and technological advance, particularly when one could hear great music on it, like Toscanini and the NBC Symphony Orchestra was on the radio. So that was a signal change in my mind. Curiously, television was not, because the first television sets that I saw were grainy and you hardly saw anything with the whole family. It's amazing that, that I lived this long. It's wonderful. I think my grandparents lived to the age of maybe 65 or so combined. My father lived to the age of about 58, 59. My mother lived to the age of about 48, 49. So this is just amazing. And they always say that, in your head, you think you're still young. I mean, I can't conceive of myself as 84. When I look in the mirror, I say, holy mac, look at that old guy there with this here. It's not what the head is. If I'm mentioning Scarlett Johansson, as my birthday gift or something. So
what do you think those
fooling myself. Well, I think all that the extra years does, hopefully, is give you a greater perspective on things and to see that things don't change a lot, which is both good and bad. The bad part is that we still have wars and killing, and that seems to be endless, and conflicts that end up in severe violence, and that just seems to be the course of human beings. Whereas a lot of good things, again, technology has a lot to do with it, and also our being a more open society now. The United States, and in accepting all modes of living, so that people that were outliers in the past are now part of mainstream, both racially, religiously, sexual orientation, you name it. These are all good things that have happened. As I said, we had a lot of anti-Semitism when I was a kid, and that's been slowly eased, and hopefully all these other things will over time. If we're talking about what's going to happen in the future globally, it's going to be I think we're going to have a massive leveling of income equality, educational equality. Whether it's going to happen completely during your maturity and even in your 60s or 70s, I'm not sure. There's certain areas where it doesn't seem that's going to take even longer than that. But I think overall we're going to have if you will, a declining level of wealth and standard of living in the United States, but that being spread more widely on the upside in other parts of the world where other people will be doing better, relatively. If you look really far in the future, as I said yesterday, I think that we reached our peak, and my life is not going to be duplicated. Again, the opportunities that we had in our generation will not be repeated. Now, some of the reasons why those opportunities have been cut down for your generation are good developments. Like in my generation, only white males got into law firms, period, and only white male non-Jews in the white shoe firms. Now the competition for good law jobs, for example, is much more intense. You've got Asians, you've got African Americans, you've got half of the graduating classes are women now. So it's and there's more lawyers, there's more competition. That, I think, is throughout the entire society and the various types of jobs that are available here. Plus the foreign competition is severe in terms of lower costs for companies to buy things other places, to set up factories other places. I think this trend's going to continue. If I can meet any person, dead or alive, today, it would be Franklin D. Roosevelt. He dominated American life in my entire youth, from the beginning of 1933 right through to the practically the end of World War II. And there were a lot of questions I'd ask him about the conduct of the war, different particular people that he appointed, and how he really got the New Deal going. There isn't enough documentation of that the way there is, for example, for LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson's presidency. Anthony Caro wrote 3 full, each 600-page books on Johnson and how he manipulated, maneuvered, traded. I had a lot of questions I'd have of FDR on that subject. And I still have a very intense interest in politics. Now, I just add one other thing. If J.S. Bach spoke English and wasn't, sort of narrow-minded as a person that was born in 1685 and died in 1750, he would be my number one choice to talk about music. In Cambridge in England, and European University Institute in Florence, and in Nice, France, at their venture capital.
So this was in the 90s.
No, this was when David was 4 years old.
Okay.
It was in the 80s. And that was a wonderful time, and we lived in Paris. I had an apartment there, and David went to the American school in Paris then for a bit, kindergarten, Trumpington Kindergarten in Cambridge, England. And I had a wonderful time. I wasn't teaching really full time. It was just, I was the visiting honcho, if you will, at these schools, including at the Sorbonne. I co-taught with a French teacher who's a lifelong friend. And that was a wonderful year. It was spending real time in these wonderful cities in Europe and having it was just neat as could be and carefree. A typical day when I was 40 years old, and thinking about that, that would have been 1970. In 1970, I lived in Geneva, Switzerland, for the whole year, and I had a good number of clients that were based in Europe, so it was a perfect place in the center of Europe to go any place within 3/4 of an hour by plane or driving a few hours. So I was at the height of law practice, I think, at that time. And I also traveled almost around the world then, because I also was doing work as the overseas ambassador with James Roosevelt, FDR's second oldest son. The two of us went many places in the world to try to open up different countries for the sale of mutual funds by the Kornfeld IOS organization. So we went to Japan, we went all over, went to South America, to Brazil, Argentina, flying there and having the best of times with these people and taking out the top political and finance ministers of various countries. It was a very, very interesting year. It was a wonder, and it was a very different year than being most of the years, like if you said 1939, or when I was 41, we were back in New York at Samer and Haft doing the securities law, the securities offerings. But that year was something very, very special.